dangerous. He's mad. I do so love custard. Or was it mustard? We removed your brain. Do you comprehend, commie animal? Get your act together. You're making us look like a collection of round earthers.
Vivisect me, please.
You think I don't know how crazy I sound? Of course I do. They made me just to torture me.
The things you do with our body are suicidally dangerous. You're a monster. A deranged monster.
While exploring the Y-17 medical facility in yesterday's video, we happened upon a holotape. Sync Project Autodock. This holotape contains the personality of the Autodock appliance in the sink. Heading back to the sink, we can activate the Autodock to install his personality.
Well, how about that? Old Autodock's back online. Well, alright, come here, let's have a look at you. Well, you ain't the fittest horse that ever ran a race, but you don't appear in immediate danger of keeling over. I can patch you up if you want.
Finally, an appliance that isn't trying to flirt with me or bounce erotic sound waves off of me. Well, pleasure to meet you, Autodock. Can you do anything beyond healing me?
Well, firstly, I would say providing wholeness of the body is service enough, but if you must know, I'm also programmed with cosmetical subroutines. Diagnostic says they're offline for the moment, though. Something about corrupted data files and all manner of such foolishness. If you want a haircut or a nose job that won't leave you looking like a ghoul with alopecia, you'll have to find replacement discs for them. Also, and I won't swear to this, but I recollect at some point having a few implant installation modules. Can't speak to where they got to, though.
Alright, well, sounds like if we want to unlock this guy's other services, we have to do a bit of exploring. But right off the bat, he's able to heal us. We can say, I'd like to engage your services.
And rightly so, I should think. Alright then, let me just fire up the old interface for you.
And we see a menu of options, most of which we don't have access to yet. This prototype Autodock is capable of performing a thorough physical examination and curing the patient of all common ailments, radiation sickness, lacerations, broken bones, even chemical addictions. In addition, it can also give haircuts and perform cosmetic surgery. For the moment, since it's all we can do, we can choose basic physical exam. We are now completely healthy. Another option that's available immediately is the second one. We can say, I'm feeling a little unwell in the head. Can you perform a psychiatric evaluation on me?
Concerned about the state of your mind, are you? Well, such things ain't my specialty, but I'm happy to tender my opinion as to your mental health. I should make you aware that the benefits of such a procedure are exclusive. That is, this only works once. Now, are you sure this is what you want?
This allows us to re-choose our traits, but we can only do it once. Remember, at the very beginning of the game, we chose 2 traits, one of which could be the Wild Wasteland trait, for example. If we really want to repick our traits, we can say, I'm ready, let's do this.
Alright, just try to relax. This won't hurt, unless your sense of self is especially vulnerable.
The Autodock's psychiatric evaluation will allow you to redefine the traits you selected when you created your character. You may only do this once. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes. Twist my psyche into new and exciting shapes. With that, the trait menu pops up. This is great because likely when we created our character, we were forced to choose 2 traits before even playing the game without really understanding how the game worked or what we even needed. Now our character is likely in his or her 30s. Possibly even 40s. We've been playing this character for quite some time. We're comfortable, and we now know what kind of traits we would prefer. The way I like to use this is to do a hard save right before going to this menu, and then going through a few of the different traits to see how I like them. For example, I want to try the Trigger Discipline trait, which makes me 20% more accurate with guns or energy weapons, but it causes me to fire 20% more slowly. I can then head outside and test this. Here I am with my hunting rifle. And as you can see, it's much slower. This is what it was like before the trait. Here I am with my revolver before. And here I am with my revolver after. Yeah, I'm glad I saved before. This new slower firing speed is not really up my alley. But as you can see, we can do this for every single trait in the game. Really handy. But we need to unlock the Autodoc's other features. Thankfully, when exploring Y-17, the very place where we found the Autodoc's personality to begin with, we find 2 other holotapes. The first is the Cosmetic Enhancements holotape. Heading back to the Autodoc, we now have the option to initiate cosmetic surgery. When we do, we get access to the laser grafter device, a skin resurfacing unit. This allows us to change our skin tone, our skull structure, everything about our face. And we can use it over and over again without having to spend any money. Pretty great. The final holotape we also find in Y-17 is the Autodoc upgrade Implant C13, which we find leaning against a broken terminal at the very top. This allows us to go back to the Autodoc and install an implant. The implants work in much the same way as the implants that we get from Dr. Usanagi at the New Vegas Medical Clinic. Each of these implants gives us a new perk, but it does cost money. Why the Autodoc needs 8,000 caps from us for this C13 perk, I don't know. But if we install this implant, we gain 10% Cazador damage at the cost of 8,000 caps. Taking a look at our Pip-Boy, we see a new perk. Implant C13 was originally designed as a defensive turret subroutine to help eliminate Cazadors should they escape from their containment, but it's been repurposed for testing on human subjects, plus 10% damage to Cazadors. We found the next implant when exploring the X13 facility. There, when we read a terminal from a technician named Slow, we found an email from his boss, Dr. Callis, giving him the details of an implant which should allow him to process food more effectively. Dr. Callis was concerned that his work performance was poor because he was so fat and he ate so much fatty foods. Well, after reading this note, we get the details for this implant, which we can then take to the Autodoc. We see a new option, install Implant Y-7. Bonus HP and AP from food at the cost of 20,000 caps. If we choose this one, after spending the money, we get Implant Y-7. Implant Y-7 is an enzyme booster that increases the health gained from foods and recovers additional action points per food item consumed. I suppose this would be a great one for survival characters that have spent a lot of time on their survival skill and cook a lot of food. For the next implant, we need to travel to Z14. This is the Pepsine DNA splicing lab. After looting some containers on the step just outside, we get attacked by a Cazador. That's because Z14 is the birthplace of the Cazadors. Heading inside, we find ourselves in a lab. There's a lot of gore and viscera all over the floor. We find a table with a chemistry set on top, which we can use to make stim packs or chems, and then we can loot some of the various containers in this room. We see a staircase in the northeastern corner, and taking it down, we pass by a number of chewed up human bodies. Rounding the corner, we find the next Cazador. And I had forgotten how difficult these Cazadors are. So reloading our previous save, healing myself up first, and trying again. And while killing the Cazadors here, we complete the challenge, Kaza Death Dealer. Kill Cazadors in Big Mountain. There are 3 ranks to this challenge, each of which has a different reward. We complete rank 1 by killing 2 Cazadors. This gives us rank 1 of the DNAvenger perk, which grants us plus 10% damage against Cazadors. We complete rank 2 of Kaza Death Dealer by killing 5 Cazadors. This grants us rank 2 of the DNAvenger perk, which grants us a bonus of 20% damage against Cazadors. And we complete the final rank of Kaza Death Dealer by killing 10 Cazadors. This gives us the final reward of the DNAvenger perk, which is a 30% damage bonus to Cazadors. There are so many Cazadors here in the Z14 Pepsine DNA splicing lab that we can almost complete all 3 ranks just by clearing it. If there weren't enough Cazadors here our first time through, we can always wait 3 or 4 days and come back again. Then we'll find more Cazadors in these cells. While exploring, we find a few containers. In one, I found a full suit of recon armor. And as we go along, we find a whole bunch of cell doors. Some of these cell doors have Cazadors inside, and others have random junk. The easternmost door leads to a lab where we find Specimen 73.
Done. Writing now. I can't give you anything for that injury.
If it weren't for my stealth suit, I don't know if I would have survived. That was a tricky one. On his body, we find an atomic valence tri-radi-oscillator. This is an improved version of the valence radi-accentuator. It has better stats, giving us 4 DT plus 1 endurance and health regeneration, and it looks a lot different. Instead of 1 single halo around the head, we have 3, giving us a 360 protective barrier. Because it has more rings, it heals more hit points. It heals 24 hit points every in-game hour instead of the 12 hit points that the valence radi-accentuator heals. Inside the lab, we find a lot of containers, some scrap, and a scientist's glove on one of the tables. We find some buff out on one of the pens, and on the operating table in the middle of the room, we find the auto dock upgrade Implant M-5. Before going back to the auto dock to install it, let's finish exploring. We find a door to the northwest of this room. Inside, we find a bunch of caps on one of the bottom shelves, a few ammo containers, and a whole bunch more scrap. We can then open each of the remaining doors here to kill the remaining Cazadors. In one of the cells, we find an ammunition box hiding behind the door, and then a laser rifle on the ground with a bunch of microfusion cells. To leave, we retrace our steps and go out the door where we came in.
Mighty think tank, still cowering in your dome? Cower, you fools, cower.
And then we can head back to the sink. We find a new implant option. Install the Implant M-5 increased speed while crouched. This costs 10,000 caps. Taking a look at the perk on our Pip-Boy, you can be made better, faster, stronger. Actually, just faster. The M5 implant increases your crouched movement speed by 20% for greater efficiency as a test subject. This is the one I'm most excited about. I can see this being useful in many situations. We find the next one when exploring the Z9 Crotalus DNA Preservation Lab. Just outside, we find an electrical box with some loot inside, and there's a Sunset Sarsaparilla machine right against one of the ruined walls. Night Stalkers like to run around here. And once the ones outside are dead, we can enter through the main door. Inside, we find ourselves in another tunnel, very similar to the one where we found all those Cazadors, but here we find Night Stalkers. This must be the birthplace of the Night Stalkers, or at least one of the places where they were housed. We recall that the Night Stalkers at X13 were being experimented on by Dr. Callus to give them a stealth field. I believe the Night Stalkers were made here by Dr. Boris and then given to Dr. Callus to further enhance them. In one of the rooms to the right, after killing a Night Stalker hiding in there, we find a trunk to the right of the door with a bunch of Night Stalker body parts inside, including some Night Stalker squeezins. We find Night Stalker blood and squeezins lying out on a table, a whole bunch of containers, and then a chemistry set on a table with more squeezins and blood where we can create some stim packs or chems. There's a door to the north that opens up to another part of this lab. Here we see a trunk on the ground that we can loot, and we find some Night Stalkers on the other side of a gate, which is great. This means we can shoot at them from safety, right? It doesn't make any sense. How did that Night Stalker get on the other side of the gate?
Injecting stim pack.
And then this other one got stuck in a wall. Well, at least we survived. Heading out, we can explore some of the other cells. In the one directly in front of us, we find a dead lobotomite on the ground, still wearing one of his lobotomite masks, and a duffel bag leaning up against some of the cages. Some of these cells are empty, but inside the large door to the south, we find a boss Night Stalker named Shaddus.
Time to fight.
The revolver didn't work well, but thankfully I had Fido to back me up. We find another operating lab, lots of tables covered in blood and surgical equipment, hacksaws and knives, big buzz saws and lasers attached to arms above them. On one of the operating tables next to a dismembered Night Stalker tail, we find the Autodoc upgrade holotape, Implant Y-7. Cages with doors ripped off or chewed open, and Night Stalker eggs all over the floor. To the south, we find an electric hot plate with some cave fungus on top, vials of Night Stalker blood and squeezins, a workbench, and a whole bunch of containers to loot. There's a chemistry set on a table to the north, where we can create some stimpaks or chems, and a locked door to the northeast. Inside, we find another stash of caps, more ammo containers, scrap, and other randomized loot. Heading out and going east, we find an open door to the left. Inside, we find a skeleton and a duffel bag, and the remaining cells have more boxes and randomized loot. There's also a perk we get from killing Night Stalkers called DNAvenger, which grants us a bonus against Night Stalkers, but I went over that when I did my video on the X8 research facility. Back outside, we can climb a rubble ramp on top of the roof of this facility, where we find a first aid kit and a greasy toolbox. Inside the greasy toolbox, we find some sugar bombs. Otherwise, there's nothing special about this toolbox. The reason it's a greasy toolbox is because it belonged to Technician Slow. Technician Slow is the guy who owned the terminal inside X13, where we found the holotape for Implant Y-7. On his desk, we found another greasy toolbox. It was likely one of the places where Slow stashed all of his sweets. He also used the air vents in X13 to store more of his sugary treats. Anyway, with the holotape in hand, we can head back to the sink to install it in the Autodoc. Once installed, we find a new implant option. Install Implant Y-7. Drinking radiation removed, but it costs 12,000 caps. When done, we can explore our brand new perk. Implant Y-7 places an internal filtration system in the digestive tract that strips any liquid consumed of all radioactive particles before being processed by the body. Pretty cool. Not sure if it's worth 12,000 caps though. We find the next one inside the Signal Hills transmitter. I covered this place in yesterday's video. We find the holotape lying against a typewriter. Autodoc upgrade hair styling enhancements. This opens up the Get a Haircut option in the Autodoc menu. And here we find the haircut interface, very similar to using Sergio's services at the School of Impersonation, where we found the king. Now, the final options only unlock after we complete the primary quest in the game and retrieve our brain. With the Autodoc, we're able to reinstall our brain, heart, and spine. As a reminder, when we arrived at Big Mountain, we received 3 new perks. The brainless perk, when our brain was removed. Our brain has been replaced with advanced technologies. Our head can no longer be crippled and is 25% more resistant to addiction, and more resistant to shock from bodily damage, with a bonus of plus 5% to our DT for a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 3. We also got the Heartless perk after they removed our heart. Our heart has been replaced with advanced technologies. We can no longer be poisoned, and filters in our heart will also regulate bleeding and healing, allowing all healing items or chems to function at higher levels. Robots are now confused by us and 50% less likely to score a critical hit. And after they removed our spine, we got the Spineless perk. Our spine has been replaced with advanced technologies, our torso can no longer be crippled, and our strength and DT have been increased by 1. But once we complete the primary quest, we can use this Autodoc to swap in our body parts. If we place our heart back in our chest, we lose the Heartless perk, but we gain the Cardiac Arrest perk. Cardiac Arrest. Our heart is back in our body, but some advanced technologies remain. we are 50% less resistant to poison, and robots are only somewhat confused by us, making them 25% less likely to score a critical hit. But on the bright side, healing items and chems are even more effective. If we choose to place our brain back in our skull, we lose the brainless perk, but we gain the big-brained perk. Big-brained. Our brain is back in our body, but some of the advanced technologies remain. Our head still cannot be crippled, but we're only 10% more resistant to addiction now. Surprisingly, our damage threshold has improved by 10%, for a minimum of +1 DT and a maximum of +6. And finally, if we choose to place our spine back in our body, we lose the spineless perk, but we gain the reinforced spine perk. Reinforced spine. Our spine is back in our body, but some of the advanced technologies remain. Our torso can now be crippled again, but our strength and damage threshold bonuses have doubled, giving us a +2 to each. Heading into the organ storage room, we see that the heart, spine, and brain are no longer in their tanks. I know I jumped ahead a little bit to show you what this Autodoc can do, but never fear, ladies and gentlemen. I will cover the entire story of how we get our brain back, if we even choose to, in an upcoming episode. Like all of the devices in the sink, the Autodoc has random conversations as we walk by, and they almost all relate to sleep.
Forceps, nurse. This man's got a severe case of shoe lung. No, not that scalpel. The fish scalpel. Foot bone's connected to the leg bone. Leg bone's connected to the purple bone. Three angry death claws make for a lot of reconstructive surgery.
And at the very end of the game, if we activate the Autodoc, we get the following ending.
Autodoc, always gentle and methodical, kept sewing up the courier in all the right places when the skin split open from repeated wear and tear. The Autodoc was just glad to have purpose again. It heard its simpler brothers and sisters who got shipped to the Sierra Madre were bored out of their skulls in that toxic dead city. In time, the Autodoc found a way to deactivate the Y-17 trauma harnesses, releasing the corpses they had held prisoner for almost 200 years.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the full story of the Autodoc from Old World Blues. This is my 10th episode in my series on Old World Blues. We are well on our way through the DLC, but never fear, we still have so much more to do. We have a few more appliance personalities to discover and install, and we still have to defeat Dr. Mobius and retrieve our brain. I publish a new video in this series 6 days a week, so if you want to make sure that you don't miss the next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. I have a new shirt in the shop, folks. New California Republic. That's right, NCR fans. I'm not going to do a Legion shirt without doing one for the NCR as well. On the front, we have the NCR logo, complete with the two-headed bear, and on the back, we've got crisscrossing service rifles with a trooper helmet and the words, "Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter." You can find it in a variety of shirt styles, including hoodies, a wide range of colors, and a wide array of sizes. You can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with episode 11.